dear God.
Well, those doors are shut, and those doors aren't full of people coming in, so I say we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Casper. I serve as the mayor of the city of Idaho Falls, and I am vice chair of the board for the Energy Communities Alliance. We are privileged today to have with us 8 different managers covering 8 different sites. However, there are more sites than that. But we have those with us. Many of you will remember, well, some of you won't, because it maybe wasn't a big deal to some of you, but to some of us, and I can't remember what year it was. Maybe you can help me, Kara, but it might have been 2017, 2018, but we had a manager's panel, and it might not have been at this meeting. It might have been at InterGov, but at that end, we were in Nashville, is what I remember, but every single person who was on that panel of 8 or 9 managers was a white male. And most people, you know, didn't pay much attention to it. But those who did were kind of thinking that we needed to get with the times. And so we do have a little bit more diversity up here now than we did then. And that's kind of a nice thing. I'm not the person who beats that drum, but it is still kind of nice to see some women in leadership. And we will actually have a question that talks about that a little bit today. I remember taking more than one vacation where we were with kids and maybe had the privilege of being near a river. And for whatever reason, I better not tell that part of the story. Let's see. For whatever reason, it was kind of cool to spit or do other things in a river to say that you did it. And what was really cool is when you could be at a confluence of 2 rivers, right? Because then you could say, I spit in once and spit into 2 rivers. Again, I don't know why that's a big deal, but it was kind of fun. It was something that my ex-husband egged the kids on with, and they all thought it was great fun. Unless it was all the boys together, and I just left. But anyway, when you think about that word confluence, things coming together, I really can't think of a more difficult job than the individuals up here have, because they are at the confluence of politics and of finance and of science and of technology and perhaps media pressure from time to time. There are a lot of things that push through them that they often have no control, direct control over. And it really is, what they do really does embody the word management. And I do have a lot of respect for what they do. And so with that, I'm going to proceed to maybe give them a hard time and try to ruffle them up a little bit this morning. I hope that after having a break, and hopefully some of you got some caffeine, we'll be able to have some energy and maybe bring our sense of humor to this, and we'll see what we can do, how we can cram 8 people into 1 hour and give them fair time. But I wanted to let you know that when we got started, or when I tried to get started pulling this together, I'd sent an email to them, and I had said, can you please help me with 3 things? My email went out last week, so granted it was a little bit late. I should have done it a month ago, I guess. But I did get, in number 1, send me the slide or photo that you want on the screen as background when you're being introduced. I said, humor is encouraged. Let the audience really get to know you. A picture of your site will suffice, but I'm telling you, let's see, okay, be creative, send a picture of you and your hobby, your favorite pet, your messy desk, the gigantic fish you caught, or the gourmet meal you created, something that screams you. All right, and I'm just going to tell you that that was sort of what was in the email. Now, I didn't get one of the slides or one of them up here, and that is on me, but where is there it is, the clicker. So the first one would be, we have manager Laura Wilkerson here, and she does have a picture of, I think, the site, but it doesn't really scream her other than it's her picture. But okay, humor was encouraged, but we got the straight Laura. Then we have, oh, by the way, if you have your program, take a look at all of their titles. They're all field office managers, but there are 9 or 8 different titles up there. Okay, Joel did send 2, what do they call it? Political cartoons, and they didn't translate. So I'm going to have to make it up to everybody by sending those out. I'll have ECA send them out to every participant because they were funny. So that's on me. Let's see the next one. Connie, the Legos, something she loves. Fishing, something she loves. She hasn't been in Idaho for very long. And she bought that blue piece of equipment and she loves driving that. So, yeah. All right. Don't have anything here. So do you want to, or excuse me, other than to say that this is wildlife from the backyard, is that right?
My backyard.
Okay, so if you could have a bear in your backyard, I think the bear was eating suet that was meant for the birds. But anyway, you're a good manager if you can handle having a bear in your backyard. All right, Reinhard, come here. I like this one. Doesn't it make you want to go out to dinner with this guy, right? Somebody who enjoys their food. I'm right there with you. All right, we have Michael Budney. It took me a long time to get this one sized right, and even then, it doesn't, in its glory, it's even better in a bigger format. But nice picture. So we're happy to have that. Anything you want to tell us about the hockey game, the hockey that you play?
No, I just chose that picture because it shows at one time in my life I had hair color.
All right, Brian Vance. Hanford screams you. Is that what we're supposed to? Any other thoughts on that one? Okay. All right, Mr. Zimmerman. I got these last night after dinner. These were tardy. He needed an extension. Mr. Cincinnati needed an extension. I am aware, however, he was on vacation, but nevertheless, can you, of all people, to need the extension? All right, but he did send me 9 pictures, or he says there are 9. I lost track of how many it took to I think there are more than 9 up there. But we have only 8 managers. If you take him off, then we only have 7 sites represented, but there are, you say you have authority over 9 sites, so there's some field officers, or field office managers missing up here. What are the 2 that are missing, that aren't represented here today?
I would say Sandia, because most of Sandia we're doing is underground.
Okay.
It's got to be one. I have to get back to you.
Okay. All right. And there we are. Just a quick intros there. But I wanted to just start off with asking. Not everybody's going to answer every question, but I did give them some options here. And anyway, wanted to maybe turn to Brian Vance and Reinhard. We're going to ask you these questions, this question, and that is, can you tell us a little bit about how you've changed site operations to achieve greater success or efficiency? And maybe we'll start with you, Reinhard, and then we'll go to Mr. Vance.
Okay, so one of the things that we're currently in the middle of is trying to establish a virtual training facility in the Carlsbad area. And so this is an opportunity for us to be able to get hands-on training using the latest technology for our operators. We expect that it's going to move their qualification process along a little faster, where they can focus and actually make mistakes in that training environment as we move forward. This is an opportunity where we're working with the community to see if the investment we make in some of the equipment and the technology can be combined with the Southeast New Mexico College and have them eventually host those training classes so that our folks can actually get a certification. We look at this as an opportunity to also invest in some of the potash mines that are in the local area, because that's actually where a lot of our workforce comes from. So there's a benefit in that training being set up and making it available in the region, because eventually that'll pay dividends to us in the long run.
Very good, thank you. So thank you. All right, and Mr. Vance. Yeah, yeah. How have you changed site operations?
Sorry, I was thinking about all the great questions I know the first panel held for Jack and Laura, so I'm looking forward to that part of this presentation today. For me, it was really the recognition that we're really in a transformational period at the site from, I call it a feudal system, where there's multiple projects around the site that don't really interact or didn't have to interact, whether it was construction or demolition, through really the first 25 to 30 years of the cleanup mission. And there was a lot of progress made, but when we looked at the site of the future, we recognized that the site had to transition into an enterprise type model, even though we're 2 DOE offices, 6 different contractors, multiple different contract types, and the cultures that didn't always align well with an enterprise approach. And so we're really in a transformational period to reimagine the site as a single enterprise and focused on ensuring that we work together not only between the department and our contractor partners individually, but across our contractor partners, the seamlessness of communications, the engagement, the trust, the collaboration is really a fundamental difference than how we operated in the past. The pandemic was helpful in some ways for that, because it drove us to a one team, one site approach that I think was executed very well. We learned a lot about that. We put a new governance model in at the site just as the pandemic kicked off. And really exercising that approach to business over the last 2.5 years, I think, put us on a much stronger trajectory to the delivery of the direct feed low activity waste program, and really an integrated site perspective that is the way ahead for the future, that is very different from our past, and we have to help everyone on our site reimagine what our future looks like in a new environment. And I think we've come a long way. I think I'm very optimistic about where we are and where we're going. But it's a transformational time, and we're not done yet. So we'll continue to work together to create the conditions for success in the future in a new way than we were successful in the past.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We've had some emphasis on workforce during this week, and of course, most of us have that emphasis almost every day as we go to work. And so a couple of our managers here were willing to answer some questions, a question about workforce, and I had asked them to share something innovative that their site is doing with respect to workforce, and then also tell us, is their local community doing enough to help them, to support them in their goals, to create the right environment for workforce development or recruitment or whatever it is that's needed. And so I'm going to turn to Connie Fleur and Reinhardt again, and Mr. Budney for that. And so Connie, do you want to lead off and talk a little bit about Idaho and workforce?
Sure. One of the things that IEC is doing, first of all, Ty Blackford, our PM on the IEC contract, is very much interested in developing and retaining the workforce we have. And as you can imagine, in Idaho Falls, it's a pretty small community, relatively speaking. And so we have the lab and IEC and the department, the Naval Reactors Group, all vying for the same, small number of resources. So, and there's some pretty sizable private employers out there too. So it's a pretty challenging environment. But Ty has partnered with John Wagner, the lab director, and they've done a lot of things to try to tackle the workforce challenges more collaboratively, I think. And I'm really impressed with the way that's going. They actually have built this consortium for leaders from the contracting groups, the industry, and education. They are focusing on being able to sort of collectively determine what their needs are and then go out and work together instead of competitively to actually foster ways to go after the workforce through a variety of communication needs and stuff. So instead of competing against each other, I think that's the thing that I find the most compelling about it. And then IEC specifically has been working with our community college there, one of the community colleges, to provide them some resources and some talent, dedicated folks to help them build, it's like a workforce training center. So they actually help them build a business plan, get some funding, and actually identify a facility for them to work in to be able to bring to bear that industry and like the IEC team and others can actually go there and use them as a training facility to build the skills that are needed to work on the site or at any of these other organizations. So pretty proud of the collaborative effort that's going on. And as you know, ma'am, you know, the community is very supportive of us in this workforce effort. So for sure, we've got plenty of support there.
I didn't pay her to say that. She didn't have to. And we'd actually, the two of us don't talk directly about that. So it swirls around in other conversations we have. All right, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, sure. I talked a little bit about the virtual training facility just a few minutes ago. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on it. You know, with regard to, you know, workforce efficiencies and so forth, you know, there's some things our folks do really well, you know, the mining activities and ground control and so forth. But there are some other things that just as a matter of course, they just don't have a lot of experience dealing with, you know, and that would be, you know, radiological contamination issues. Typically, the containers we receive are clean, they're sound integrity. We just offload them out of the true packs and put them down in the hole and everything's fine. But, you know, we also have to plan for upset conditions. And so some of the things that we've been doing is actually partnering with Idaho and taking advantage of their workforce's experience. And I think this is an area where we're going to continue to work together to make sure that we actually get lessons learned from both sites and an integration of those workforces to not only link project goals and missions, but also to leverage the experience that different organizations have. So for example, we have a couple different initiatives. We had a safety pause at both sites. We made sure those were aligned, and we actually had workers from both sites sit in on the training briefings and discussions at the other site, where they physically went up there and sat down and participated in the discussions. There's other things that we're doing is our centralized centralized characterization program. We have folks that are embedded up with Connie's folks. There are some things her folks do very efficiently. There's some things our folks do efficiently, and we're able to leverage those to make sure that we can help Connie and her team be successful in meeting her regulatory milestones. That's also something we're doing with Los Alamos. And so more to come on that as we're, you know, trying to see what opportunities there are out there for us. You know, it's really transitioning, you know, WIP into more of a customer service organization. And so that's just a little bit of a different mindset. And, you know, and it always starts with the workforce. And, you know, I think, again, the benefits to the community are that we're able to demonstrate the trust they've provided to us with regard to being able to have WIP in that area and be able to execute our mission.
Thank you, thank you. Listening to the experience and the wisdom of the actual workers is never going to be a bad thing. All right, and then we had also Mr. Buddy.
Yeah, so our contractors have done really a great job working with the community to try to procure the workforce that they need, and they do it in a whole variety of ways. Of course, we have the Community Reuse Organization runs our work grants, which provide scholarships money for folks that are going to go to school in the areas that we need. Our contractors have greatly leveraged the state's apprenticeship program, from a few apprenticeships to like 150 ongoing apprenticeships right now, where we bring people in and we really get to know them, and they get hired by the contractors. Part of the issue is the way we advertise. You know, some folks find it daunting to try to figure out, or they're not aware of where to look to get a job. So they've held in areas of critical need like IT, the contractors have organized specific job fairs. So we did this one for IT, and they had several hundred people show up, and I believe they made about 35 job offers on the spot for IT, which was an area where you thought you couldn't get get people in, but they made it happen. So they're kind of taking an all-above approach, and of course we have the MESIP program run by the lab too, which we leverage for folks. So I think really the contractors are doing just a superb job of reaching out and finding people from all areas, and especially the advertising piece is a big deal of getting out there so that people understand what's available.
Thank you, thank you. I had also mentioned that we talk a little bit about women and women and young people, of course, work in fields throughout the entire industry, and they work in all fields, but we still don't see that many women leading field offices, and we don't have enough young people, or we worry that we don't have enough young people prepared to step into leadership roles. And so if I could turn to Los Alamos next, can you tell me, as a manager, what kinds of actions are you taking to develop women leaders and a deep bench for your site?
Thank you for that question. With nearly 28 years working within the Department of Energy, I've had the opportunity to work at many different sites across the complex, which has give me the opportunity to engage and encounter the diverse, a large number of folks across the country. You heard yesterday a discussion about developing the future EM workforce, and those engagements have given me the opportunity to meet a number of folks and to offer coaching and mentoring opportunities. It's one thing is recruiting and bringing in a diverse workforce, and in this case, diverse is more than just diversity in terms of gender. It's all the other factors too. But one of the things I've done over my career is make it a priority and a focus for me. It's one of the reasons I sought a position in the executive workforce, was to be able to engage with women and minorities to help them achieve the potential that they're capable of, to give them whatever experience, whatever capabilities I or somebody on my team has to help them achieve that next career milestone. So throughout the years, I've created relationships with folks, some of which are actually in the room here with us today, to help them achieve that. I either myself or I bring someone else to them that can help them address their specific needs, where we can get together and discuss what they're dealing with. I set aside time on my calendar for all the coaching and mentoring, and it's informal, to discuss what's going on with them, and as I get to know them, what their interest priorities, what their challenges are, to bring case studies, what if scenarios, if you will, and help them work their way through and discover how to achieve that potential. I get an immense satisfaction from being able to help the people around here and to develop that next level of leadership. And I feel that women and minorities, we need to focus on that to really give them those opportunities and help, as the administration says, to make our workforce more representative of what America is. Thank you for giving me that chance.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkerson, how do you focus on, particularly on women and young people, and giving them leadership opportunities to develop the bench?
So I think I try to go back to my own experience, coming to the department through an internship program right out of college, and having given the opportunity to be exposed to different program areas within Oak Ridge operations, and having excellent mentors to help me through my career. So I just try to first focus on encouraging our supervisors and people that are working on recruitment to actually work hard and be deliberate in, when they're interviewing candidates and going through the hiring process, identifying highly qualified candidates to increase our minority and women representation. But also when they come on board, trying to give them opportunities and expose them to the different facets of our operation within the Oak Ridge operations, and just encouraging them overall to, to step up, take new assignments so that they can contribute to their own development.
So I'm going to ask really quickly, sort of a lightning question, and we'll just start with Jack, and then we'll move all the way across. Can you tell us how many people, DOE souls that you oversee, and then how many maybe contract individuals? And that might be a little harder for you, but how many people do you oversee?
Yeah, right now the EM Consolidated Business Center, we have approximately, well, it's different, I guess, between how many FTEs could we oversee versus how many we have on board. But we have, right now, we have about 186 approved FTEs for the Consolidated Business Center and all of the, our 9 small sites that we deal with. We probably have somewhere on the order of about 150 to 160 on board.
So you
and we
have
are
a significant percentage not hired.
Yes, and we're looking at, but we've been making progress lately this year in closing that gap. It was lower at the beginning of the year. So we are starting to fill that pipeline. From a contractor standpoint, I don't have that head count across all the sites, but I can give basically a ballpark that we're probably in the 600 to 700 range from contractor FTEs.
Mr. Vance, just those numbers, and if you have significant vacancies?
No, I appreciate the question. Our top line is 385. We're about 300 today for my staff. We're supported by about 200 support contractors for, my headquarters staff. Contractors roll up to close to 10,000 if you add the subcontractors that support the primes, probably 12 to 13,000.
Okay, Ms. Wilkerson.
We have approximately 2,500 contractor employees and 81 federal FTEs.
And in your office, and out of those 81, how many are vacant?
About 5 or 6.
Not too
that
bad,
are in the
not too
process.
bad. All right, Mr. Putney.
We're authorized 259 feds. We have 206 right now. About 85 support contractors do direct support for us. And then the workforce throughout the site is about 8,000 contractors who work EM missions.
All right, so you have a fair number of vacancies in your own unit. All right, turning here.
I'm authorized almost 40 federal positions, and we rely on about 30 direct support contractors to help us accomplish the mission. My N3B corporate partner has a workforce of a little bit over 600.
Okay, and do you have a significant vacancy rate in your own office?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably, when I came in, we were about 1/3 understaffed in the federal workforce, and we've augmented some of that with the support contracting as we bring it in. And my corporate partner is struggling with the great black hole across the bridge. That's called the National Lab, with 4.2 billion reasons to be attracting workers, and they struggle with that challenge all the time.
All right, Connie.
Yeah, I'm authorized at 51. We have 38 on board right now, 14 of which I'll just say are women, so that's a good thing. And I think our contractors are about 1,800, is that right?
All right.
Okay, so we're authorized for 65 feds. We're at about 52. Actually have 6 tentative job offers out, and we're just waiting to get through that process. Interesting statistic, almost half of our office has been brought on board within the last 2.5 years. So very difficult challenge for us onboarding all those people during COVID time frame. And then when we take a look at our contractors, we're in the ballpark of 1,500 all in.
All right, Mr. Bradburn.
Excuse me. So had 57 feds authorized. We're about 6 positions shy. 3 physical locations, Portsmouth, Paducah, and Lexington, Kentucky. In Lexington, in addition to the 57 head count, which spread between the 3 sites, we're on the order of about 147 support service subcontractors. And then at Portsmouth, head count is nominally about 2,200. And at Paducah, it's about 1,900 all in.
Okay, so that is a relevant topic of concern, and I'm glad that everybody's thinking about it at the same time. All right, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Bradburn, can tell us a little bit about what, with 3 different sites, 3 different flavors of personalities of leaders, and it may be difficult to unify anyone, and maybe there are times when there's no need for unity, it's just a matter of pleasing each site. But what does stakeholder engagement mean to you, and what does it involve? And can you describe a little bit about the challenge of 3 different places and personalities, perhaps?
So, obviously there are challenges, especially when you're talking, college teams and that kind of stuff. Everybody has their own favorite. But you know, we all want the same thing in general. We want a, good livelihood. We want to feel like we're included, inclusive in the mission, and we want to know that we're doing something that's worthwhile and important. And sometimes, we lose track of where we are in that equation, but I think the goal is to make sure we routinely touch people and make them feel part of the family. And I'll say, COVID put a little, twist to a curveball at us, but I think it's made us better. And it's, I'll say, at least for me, that I feel technology hates me most days, has made me embrace it, okay? And so things like, virtual meetings, things like using technology to broadcast, project or program status or accomplishments. And you don't have to pitch the huge, things. I mean, obviously we celebrate the building coming down at Portsmouth, and you've seen that here. But there are other things that we celebrate, and we've used IT to communicate across Portsmouth, Paducah, and Lexington, such as, Feds Feed Families, collections, such as, an outreach program by one of the contractors to one of the local school systems and communities. The other thing I will say that I'm exceptionally proud to watch is, the transfer, we call it knowledge transfer, but I think it's also, conversational communication and transfer by both the Paducah and the Portsmouth side. We have seen, and I don't know if COVID helped with that because people were so tired of staying at home and needed to get out and travel. But as soon as the travel restrictions lifted, the folks going from Paducah to Portsmouth and then back to Portsmouth to Paducah to see and do job planning and, other program integrations, it's been pretty cool to watch, and it's increased the conversation and the level of conversation across the organization. And it's not just with the prime contractors, but I'll say, the labor, the union folks as well have been great to see the folks go from Portsmouth to Paducah and Paducah to Portsmouth, and that's probably a long answer to something that I don't have can't completely put my finger on, but the other bit is you got to have a good time, right? If you're sitting in this job day after day after day and you're miserable, right? Then somebody needs to poke you in the side, okay? And so that's the other part of this job is we can actually get a lot of stuff done and have a good time doing it. And so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, sticking with the local level communication, local officials, which I'm one, and there are many of us in the room, we care about this question, and there are a few of you that thought you might be able to give us some advice. But what are the most important considerations that local officials can bring to the relationship with a field office manager? And what can we do to contribute to our success, right? Which is a nice way of saying, how do we avoid doing things incorrectly? And so I know that Mr. Bundy thought you might have some comments on this one, and I think, who else offered? Mr. Knurr and Mr. Vance all said that they might have something to say on this one.
Yeah, we have pretty good conversations with our local community, the mayors, the leader of the county council. When we rolled out the budget this year, we went to each of them and had discussions with the groups in all the surrounding counties about what the budget looked like, what our priorities were. And those are key events to understand what their priorities are too, but having those individual meetings on a regular basis, about every 2 months we get together with folks in small group meetings and understand, make sure that there's no misconception about what we're doing and what they're doing in the community, because what they're doing in the community is a big help to us. And one of the best things that has come out recently is through our community reuse organization, initiated by our contractors, but run through the community reuse organization is an initiative to try to create a child care center down there. And that took a lot of coordination with the county to figure out how to get the land. And so that cooperative work to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the county and the city from an economic viewpoint, and working with small businesses is a big deal. And them helping us with our needs on the other end, where there's really creates that win-win for us, that we're going to create a business we think that's going to help them, and it's certainly going to help us.
I think you're speaking a lot of wisdom. The CRO in Savannah River, or the Savannah River CRO, has been particularly effective with helping to always make sure that the conversation is infused with how do you create a successful business climate. And for what you say, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to engage with local businesses, because they will in turn support you readily if they feel that support from you. Mr. Vance, any insight on how local officials can be effective in their dealings with? We work very hard to ensure that we have a very strong relationship with our local community leaders, community businesses. We've got 2 of the 4 Tri-Cities mayors here. Don't think too much about the math in that comment. But it's really an important relationship for our team. The relationship between the community and the site has been in place since the 40s, 1940s, from the beginning of the Manhattan Project through the National Security Mission, into the cleanup mission, and into today. And so I send a short summary of the site performance and activities every month to the mayors, and for the EM staff here, I don't clear that, so don't hear that when I say it. But I think the reality of it is, it's really important I think about the constituents of our elected officials. I think about the constituents that our business leaders have with the people they represent, and knowing what's happening on the site, knowing that the progress we're delivering, understanding our safety record and our focus on safety, understanding as we think about the future of the site, and we'll talk more about this in the panel at 1 o'clock. So if you have your baggage here, you just have to keep it on the side and not leave before that panel. But we work really hard in our stakeholder environment, as you'd imagine, for a $2.7 billion a year enterprise is fairly large and diverse. And it runs the gambit of the communities, the state officials, our congressional delegation. We really appreciate the support from Senators Murray and Cantwell and Congressman Newhouse, and the tribes, the labor's relationship with not only the contractors but the department. All of those things kind of coalesce into a collective community spirit and engagement in the site that we leverage and we depend upon to be successful in a very challenging mission. And so, I spend, a majority of my time as an enterprise leader, because a lot of the sites are a little bit smaller, and there can be a little bit more of a connection between the site managers and their staff and the work, and in smaller communities. I've got to look at it much bigger than that in most cases, and think about the role that we have in the community as the largest employer, and the benefits that we provide to the community through that partnership that we also bring back onto the site in the execution of a very challenging mission. So it's a relationship that I invest a lot of time in, our team invests a lot of time in, because it's truly important to be successful. And in a site as big as Hanford, we're going to have challenges periodically. But when we have those challenges, the confidence and the trust of our local community leaders, our local businesses, the entire region, in our ability to manage those challenging situations, keep people safe, resolve the issue, and move forward in an effective, cost-effective, and efficient way is critical to our long-term success. And so I would say I spend 75% of my time thinking about how can we make our relationship with our very diverse stakeholder and tribal arena stronger. And I would say we've made progress. It's not ever anything we can ever stop, but it's critical to our long-term success. And so we need to just continue to pay attention and invest our time and energy into creating that environment that will support the success of the site for decades. Thank you. 2 things. One, if you advertise for your panel later on again today, one more time, you're off. You're kicked off this panel. But the other thing is, he's right. That's a lot of time that you're investing, but every little bit of information you share with others, you create advocates and multiply your voice, amplify your voice when you do share that information. So thank you for pointing for raising that point. And let's see, Mr. Vance, do you have anything you wanted to share on where am
Oh, you wanted
I already
Reinhardt, I
talked.
think.
Wait,
You
sorry.
wanted Reinhardt.
I know who you meant.
No, yes, Reinhardt. Do you have anything you want to share on this topic?
Yeah, sure. I think Mike and Brian did a really good job talking about, a lot of the key points. I just, want to reiterate, I think, being open and honest with your, local stakeholders. We're part of the community, and, we recognize that, we have kids that go to school with their kids. People are involved in different, clubs and leagues and activities, and you see each other in a, in a social environment. And so, you always have to make sure that, communication, is that very open, honest, truthful, personal relationship as you're moving forward. That's the only way to make sure you can continue to maintain trust, because once you lose it, getting it back is very difficult and painful. I think the other thing, is being able to look and identify opportunities where both parties can contribute. Whether it's, looking at, the virtual training facility, or whether it's trying to figure out how to establish electric charging stations in Carlsbad and where the best locations for those might need to be. And, who's going to take care of long-term maintenance of those if, department invests in them, can those be transferred over to the city so they get an advantage and we get an advantage? And it's finding those opportunities for synergy that, we need to focus on as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go to Jack for a minute here. Can you just tell us how many, talk for just a moment, and we'll leave community after this question, but how many of the contracts that you administer have the community support clauses? And from your perspective, are they successful, or what makes them successful?
Yeah, I mean, we are putting those clauses in all the contracts, so I expect they'll be in every contract going forward. And I think we've heard a lot of discussion on success. I mean, right now, and I am going to take an action to go back and look at it, because I just heard at this conference that NNSA has a different approach on how they look at that community support clause. In other words, in our environment, we are not allowed to actually evaluate that. We can require the community support, so we look at the plans that the contractors provide, but there's nothing from an enforcement standpoint or a contract evaluation standpoint that EM is doing right now based on GC guidance that we will take a look at changing. So, but I haven't heard that it's necessarily been an impact. I think all the contractors, have delivered when they've said this is the community support they're going to provide. They have delivered on that. But I think we can look at taking it to the next step, perhaps, and looking at it, being able to be more of a factor for our consideration. So with that regard, I think, the community is probably going to have to talk as to how successful it is. I mean, from my perspective, I think it's very successful. I know when you're out in the communities, you'll see the contractors that are supporting the arts, or they're supporting the schools. They're out there and they're visible, and I think it's working quite well from my standpoint.
All right, thank you. And I'm surprised that there wasn't spontaneous applause when he said he was going to go back and look at this, at least from my friends out in the audience, because I think that could be wonderful if there were a measure of standardization that could allow for some enforcement that we could all get ourselves, behind and understand the rules going into it. All right, Ms. Wilkerson, we hear a lot of discussion about how Oak Ridge uses an effective partnering framework with contractors, with the federal and state environmental regulators, this confluence again, other DOE programs, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about how you view partnering and why it's important to you?
I will, but before I do that, I just wanted to go back to your introduction, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I get the message that I need to work on my sense of humor. I do know that I'm not alone on that, because Jack and Brian are kind of in the same boat. So I'll take
the party end of it.
So I'll take my lead from Reinhardt. So with that, on the question of partnering, partnering is really fundamental to the work that we do in Oak Ridge. Our work there is very complex. It spans 2 counties, Roane and Anderson County, and the city of Oak Ridge, 3 DOE sites, the Oak Ridge National Lab and the Y-12 plant, which have very important missions that have different DOE programs that are responsible for them. And we have the East Tennessee Technology Park, where we've completed the majority of cleanup there and have a lot of businesses that are cohabitating with the remaining cleanup activities at the site. So partnering, whether it be with our contractor to find solutions for our challenging cleanup problems, or whether it be with the regulators to get approval of the disposal facility, or with the community to address their concerns or questions in regards to economic development and reindustrialization, or with our partners at the Y-12 and ORNL site from other DOE programs, is really essential to what we do. We would not be able to function in this complex and expansive environment without partnering and cooperation. It takes a lot of work. You have to be deliberate about it and have regular schedule interactions with all your partners. Sometimes we do group interactions. So it's a lot of effort, but it's well worth it, and it's essential to what we do.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Budney, let's talk about H Canyon. To talk to you, it feels like it's in the center of everything, right? And your plan is to complete it, excuse me, complete the liquid waste mission within 15 years. But H Canyon, the spent nuclear fuels disposition capabilities, I'm reading here, I'm not speaking this off the top of my head, support other DOE programs. And H Canyon relies on the liquid waste systems for its operations. So what happens to the H Canyon when the liquid waste mission is finished? I mean, it's central to, I mean, what you're doing here is important.
It is. So, you know, we've put together a program to try to accelerate the processing of the spent fuel that's in L Basin through the H Canyon, because as you said, it does rely, as you process fuel through H Canyon, the waste that comes out the other end has to go to our tank farms right now and gets disposed of via vitrification in the Defense Waste Processing Facility. So the way the system's set up right now, when the liquid waste mission ends, there's not a capability to continue operating H Canyon. So it's a complex issue. There's a law that requires us to keep the canyon open right now. And so really is beginning discussions at the department level, and now's a good time to do that because we got 10 or 15 years to determine what's the it's really the post-liquid waste mission environment. How are we going to operate? Are we going to modify the canyon? Are we going to go to a different way we dispose of spent fuel? Are we going to have a different facility to process this fuel? All the options are on the table. And we got to work at the department level to figure out what the answer is going to be, because EM doesn't produce spent nuclear fuel. We just get it from other programs, and we have to be able to support those programs the way we're currently aligned. And so we got to figure out what the future is going to be. So it's a beginning of a discussion. And as you know, it takes us a little while in the government to figure these complex issues out. I mean, it took us 20 years to build the salt waste processing facility. So now is the appropriate time to start figuring out what we're going to do there.
Thank you. That planning ahead element is always appreciated. So we have less than 10 minutes left, and I've got 4 questions, so roughly 2 minutes-ish on each of these. But let's see. Let's talk about integrating Justice 40 initiatives. I had a question about this and decided that more of them could answer, but we're going to get to one. The DOE pilot program for the Justice 40 initiatives is sort of happening at your site, Mr. Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I could tell you a lot about that, but we could probably spend the whole hour of the time here, and that's not what this is about. Randy mentioned a little bit about this in the last panel, and I'll just, it's both, it's exciting, and it's an honor to be one of the first things I learned on day one when I was being introduced was EMLA was going to pilot this presidential initiative, and we've completed the initial deliverables into that, given it to OMB, which is using it to shape the broader guidance for across the agency. But there's some really while we wait for that guidance to come across for government-wide implementation, there's a lot that we can do now, although environmental justice is not Justice 40, there's an awful lot of overlap on that. Our current mission really supports the presidential initiative because the cleanup mission aligns delivering at least 40% of the federal budget of certain programs to disadvantaged communities. So our efforts to contain the chromium plume and prevent it from migrating off-site into Pueblo de San Ildefonso lands is a key example of that, where we can continue to make progress while we wait that guidance. We're developing, we talked about developing the EM workforce. My corporate partners are increasing their focus and attention on disadvantaged communities, Reba County. In fact, I had an opportunity to meet with the technician who was a recent graduate of N3B's apprentice program, who shares a really moving and passionate story about how the increased focus in bringing her into the program, how it changed her life. So we can start delivering on Justice 40, environmental justice, now while we're waiting for the broader guidance. And I guess one last thing I would share, which is kind of unique, it gets into community engagement as well. As we were trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this presidential initiative? We contacted our federal and state agencies who do environmental justice to get some advice. They've got a lot of experience and thoughts they shared with us. And one takeaway we took from that was, as we engage with communities, as we engage with the public in doing Justice 40, one of the things you've got to be prepared to talk about is, because they're hungry for environmental justice, what are you going to do differently? So one of the things that we're doing differently, I think Brian mentioned his field office has been in existence since the 40s. The lab has too, but EM's cleanup office was a spinoff of the energetic event that occurred in 2014 at WIP. And there's a lot of things to mature and develop, one of which is a more detailed strategic vision. And what are we going to do? One of the things that we're going to do differently that's, again, very exciting for me is, as we build a strategic vision, this gives us a unique opportunity to engage with the stakeholders, with our regulators, with our tribal nations that live around the site, to first engage with them about what are their values, what are their objectives, what are the priorities, and factor that into the development of a strategic vision. The priorities, how we do the cleanup, should consider those factors. And that's really important to the Pueblos, who, as they focus and emphasize on a nation-to-nation relationship, of engaging with them before decisions are being made. So that's another way. It's not Justice 40 per se, but it is delivering environmental justice, and it does align with the President's initiative. I really appreciate the time for a short introduction of that.
Well, thank you for that. Mr. Zimmerman, for you, can you describe the EMCBC role in the field?
I can, but first I do want to apologize for being late on my response back to you. And I'll share a little bit behind that, but my wedding anniversary is September 14th. So every 5 years, my wife and I take a nice vacation. And she's told me there's only one way I can change that, and thankfully she hasn't taken that route yet. Because I keep, I've even quit complaining about September is absolutely the worst time for a vacation as a federal employee, but it is, I am where I am now. But I do appreciate the accommodations you made for me. But yeah, the CBC, right now, we've got a very broad role within the department. We have line management responsibility for 9 sites. I think you heard a little bit about West Valley Demonstration Project, which has one of the most, critical projects, demolition projects active in the department right now, as they're demolishing the main plant and really changing the skyline at that site. And we also have the Moab site, a very critical project out in Utah. We also have, work going on, excess facilities across multiple NNSA sites and science sites, with Berkeley Laboratory, Lawrence Livermore, and Sandia. We also have responsibility for the E-Tech site out in California. We're also responsible for the operations in Nevada for waste disposition, low-level waste disposition that supports the entire complex, as well as the remediation from some of the testing that's been done in the past in Nevada. And we do have a couple of very key activities in Nevada that are going to be starting up shortly, with the last couple excess facilities for Nevada as we move that site a little bit closer towards completing the EM mission there. We've also started up some partnership with Naval Reactors, and we're working very closely with them at Kesselring and Capel, and there's some discussion about possibly supporting them at Bettis as well in the near future. So we've got really a presence across the entire, really from coast to coast. Those sites are fairly small, though. The budgets can range from as small as $2 to $3 million a year at Sandia with the groundwater work we're doing there to pushing almost $100 million at the West Valley Demonstration Project per year. But it does add up. But one thing we do leverage is really our technical resources. So, you know, we can't staff up like a main field office at each one of those locations. So we also have bench strength and technical support, and we share those resources, you know, not only across the CBC sites, but often across the EM sites as well. In a consolidated business center is in the title, so one of our, you know, our biggest function supporting EM is, you know, we're responsible for all of the pre-award acquisition services that go on across the complex. And I think you heard Dae Chung talking about it. Probably somewhere in the order of about $40 billion worth of cleanup contracts in the last year being awarded, and about $80 billion in the last 2 or 3 years. So really a significant amount of work has been done there in the acquisition area. But also we have the, really it's not just EMs, but the department's cost estimating center of excellence. So we provide cost estimating support to all the EM sites, but we also have relationships with NNSA, Legacy Management, and others where we provide those types of services. So really it's kind of a catch-all, you know, to some extent. We do have really a lot of resources, and we use those as efficiently as possible, like I said, to support the EM mission going forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, one of our last questions, and it can be a very quick one, but Mr. Bradburn, how do you share the good news and the successes that you have at your site? What's the most effective way of communicating success?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'll step back to a portion of my previous answer. So obviously we have, you know, personal recognitions, and we all throughout the course of the week we have daily early morning meetings, we have weekly meetings, we have bi-monthly meetings, and we always try to include a shout out to individuals specifically or project teams or whatnot. But we also, as part of I'll say the IT messaging we stood up, which, you know, I would kind of liken it to, you know, you walk around the conference area here and and you see the, you know, CNN, the newsreels up. So we have a PPPO pick of the week. And that pick of the week is probably, you know, a dozen different pictures from both Portsmouth, Paducah, and Lexington office. And because we change, you know, we change a lot over the course of just a week. And so it might be something on the 2 Duff 6 plants that have come up and operational. You know, they were down for the COVID duration, and both plants are now up and running. And so that's a big deal, right? To the, you know, the activities that we have at Portsmouth. You know, and it's not just the demolition of the buildings. There are a lot of other projects that go there, you know, and they deserve shout outs. At Paducah, you know, a lot of things going on, from deactivating, you know, a couple miles of a recirculating water system, or standing up and work toward you know, some non-detective assay or non-destructive assay, you know, measurement system, or, you know, some community action. We're getting close to and have been doing our yes, what we call our Science Alliance activities, where we share, you know, our activities at the site across the board with local high schools. And, you know, again, that's part of our pipeline initiative. You know, that's cool to share across all of our sites in a visual fashion. So, because we all get kind of, I'll say, desensitized to, you know, bulletized spread lists and checklists and tables and that kind of stuff. So, and then, you know, it's always great to say, hey, good job, you know, as you're walking through the hall. So try to keep that in mind too. But and we try to make it a myriad of venues for, you know, shout outs and acknowledgments.
All right, a couple really quick things. Raise your hand if your site has good news to share on a fairly regular basis. Does your site have good news to share on a fairly regular basis? Things that you're proud of. Right, good. All right, very quickly, going to lightning across here. How many years have you been in your present role? And just really quickly.
2.5.
2.5.
Almost 5 years at ORP, and in dog years, that's 35 years.
1 year next month.
4.5.
1.
3.
Just over 2.
Almost 2.
All right, so 5 is the longest, and that suggests that there is a bit of turnover at times, and I think that this is a job that can wear people out. I was going to ask another question very quickly, same lightning thing. Rick, I will call your Uber for you, so don't worry, I'll be done in a second here, but how often do you talk to each other very often?
Yes.
We have a phone call among all the site managers every 2 weeks.
Okay, and is it one where your boss hogs all the time, or do you actually get to collaborate?
We let our boss be there for a few minutes at the beginning, and then we ask her to leave, and then we talk among ourselves.
Ah, very good. Okay, so you do collaborate. That is wonderful. So I will just say that I have had the chance of working in 8.5 years in my role. I've had the chance to work with 3 different folks: Rick Preventure, Jack Zimmerman, and Connie Floor. And so maybe I'm burning them out, but there is that need for the relationships to be established, but they're also not always going to be with us for a long, long time in those positions. And so you never know where they're going to go next, though. So when Jack left us to go to Cincinnati, we had no idea how important that would be to us later. But it's important, I guess, to know that these folks can be magical, and just like we expect them to be perfect in their communication and their willingness to accommodate and meet all of our needs and answer all of our questions, we, I guess, each in our various roles have responsibilities toward you to respect your time and to communicate with you when we can. But we appreciate the mantra, right, and that is that you're here to help, and we appreciate the service that you give. And so with that, we'll be done. And Rick, just tell me which airport you're going to, and I'll help you get there. But thank you, and appreciate it. Let's have the folks for the next panel come right on up.